Hey folks, it's Jeff Antoniuk here. Welcome to Advanced Jazz Learning Techniques. As you can tell, I'm in a slightly different surrounding here. I'm actually up in Canada doing some work this week and some visiting and things like that. And I thought I wanted to do another video this week. I was going to take a week off, but I want to do one. And really there's another topic that I hadn't planned on that I think is an important thing for us to talk about right now. So that's why this is episode 8.5. If you have the PDF study guide, this obviously isn't in that study guide. If you don't know what I'm talking about, send me an email. I'll send you the study guide. It's a 12-page booklet that I wrote up that will help you kind of think through the videos in this series. So please send me an email, jeffantoniuk@gmail.com. I'd be happy to send that off to you. So anyway, today I want to talk about the curse of knowledge and give you one of a million examples of what that is and how we can work with it. So as you know, I do these videos, this particular series I'm trying to gear towards teachers, jazz professionals like myself around the country, around the world, who are working with, fairly advanced students and, how we can sort of bump up our game. That said, I want all the videos to speak to players as well and give us some concepts that we can use. So I think this video will do that as usual. So this idea, the curse of knowledge, Google it. There's thousands of pages and websites and everything dedicated to this, books written about this. It was actually a concept developed by some economists back in the 70s. And actually, it's a fairly central theme that I think about all the time, and I have to be very conscious about it, thinking about it in my own teaching, but in jazz teacher training, when I'm teaching jazz professionals to sort of bump up their business and sort of become better teachers, this is very central to what we do. And as you may know, I work with people who are better players than me, but who are wanting to develop their business. People who have decades of teaching experience, have taught in universities, but still know there's more that they can do. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And frankly, the more experienced the teacher is, the worse the curse of knowledge can be. So let's talk about what this is. So technically, it's a cognitive bias. And really what we're talking about here is the idea that you can't not know what you know. I know how to play the saxophone, and there's no trick I can do to unlearn that. I can try to put myself in the beginner's shoes, but psychologists, scientists have proven how insanely hard that is. So essentially what it does, especially in learning and education, is it sets us up to totally miss the mark a lot of the time. It's a very interesting subject. So in jazz teacher training, some of the things we do to try to battle this. First of all, we talk a lot about it. There's assigned reading. I assign a couple books for people to read to really understand how this goes against good learning, how to make an idea sticky, how to say something that stays with somebody and doesn't do the opposite thing and alienate them, which happens a lot of the time. So one of the things we do in jazz teacher training, first assignment to every jazz professional is start learning a new instrument. So I've taught myself drums. I started playing bass a couple years ago. I'm never going to play a gig on those instruments, but I want to be in that spot of holy crap. I'm doing my best and I can barely get to this place. So you understand. So knowing what that beginner's mind is like. So that's an important thing. We talk about many of the assumptions that we make, and that's where it gets bad. And as I've said before, I've hired probably about 100 jazz professionals, again, my level and higher, to teach at my summer camp that I've done for the last 15 years, the 50 one-day workshops I've been artistic director of. It's a bunch of stuff, and I love hiring great players. And I got to tell you, I've seen from, these are friends of mine, these are heroes of mine, and teaching that's just bad. Because, again, the curse of knowledge, the assumptions that these folks are making of, where the people are at. Now, this isn't dumbing it down. I can already hear you saying, well, okay, so now I'm supposed to dumb it down and teach some lowest common denominator stuff. No, that's not what we want to do. That, too, is bad teaching. So it gets hard. It's not dumbed down, but you can't just blast away as if they're in your brain right now. So that's what we try to get to with this teaching. And that's what is exciting to me and very creative to me. So let's talk about a specific example of this cursive knowledge. So here's a concept that I sort of fell upon I don't imagine I'm the first person on earth to to recognize this, but I can guarantee of the thousands of lessons I've had at the many universities I've taught at and attended in both Canada and the US, of the zillion articles I've read, no one's actually said this out loud. And it's actually turned out to be kind of interesting for me. So here's an example. What's in the real book? What does the real book contain? First answer a lot of people will say is jazz songs. I would say you're only half right. Anthropology, written by Charlie Parker, or Fee Fi Fo Fum, written by Wayne Shorter. Yeah, those are jazz songs. How about All the Things You Are, or Green Dolphin Street? Those are not jazz songs. That's not how they started. Those are show tunes, or pop tunes, or American Songbook, you know, Jerome Kern and Cole Porter. So, of course, we think of those as jazz songs, but they are not. So that right there, just understanding that. And again, I'm not the first person to make this observation, I don't think, but I tell you what, no one has ever told me that. I've never read that. And when I've said that to the last 200 students, it's kind of interesting, because what does that mean? So one of the big things I can think that it means is, do we interpret Fee Fi Fo Fum, or do we read what's written there? Well, we pretty much read it. I don't interpret Donna Lee, the melody to Donna Lee. That's a jazz etude that I play, written, right? My goal is to play exactly the notes Charlie Parker wrote. Now, when I'm playing All the Things You Are by Jerome Kern, if I play those notes from the real book, it's gonna sound nasty, right? And so I've had students not really aware, like they're aware they're supposed to interpret it and make it sound like jazz, but now I hear them interpreting a jazz tune. So, so we could call that, okay, that's just an amateur error or something like that. But there's the cursive knowledge, right? Like you, as a jazz pro, figured that out one day. I doubt anybody said it clearly like that. I hope they did, because that was a great teacher who got past their cognitive bias. And they put themselves back in that spot of like, holy cow. I don't even know if it says that in the intro to the real book, that this is a collection of two very different sets of songs that have to be treated entirely differently. So, if I were to play what's written for the first 8 measures of All the Things You Are, I think it's this. That's not swinging, right? But there's nothing on the page, I don't think there's anything in the foreword, that suggests what we're supposed to do about that. So that is not a jazz composition. That is an American Songbook composition that jazz players like to interpret. So right there, okay. So what does that mean? So now we can actually get into some meaningful teaching. So that right there, just understanding that little paradigm shift is good. So now, how would we teach? Is there a clear way to teach how to jazzify All the Things You Are? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Again, there's going to be a million ways to do this. One thing I thought about saying, and this gets people so far down the road and opens up sort of a dam of information. You know, a lot of my students have listened for decades. They've been listening to jazz, but they're not quite sure of the rules to follow to get it to all open up, right? I've watched tens of thousands of hours of cinema. I don't know how to make a movie, and I'm a smart guy, right? So that's the kind of thing. So here's one rule that works great. Every time you have a long note, let's call that a half note, a whole note or something, instead of playing it on the downbeat on 1 or 3, play it an 8th note early. Syncopate it. Play it early. So instead of play So I think 9 out of 10 dentists will agree, and jazz musicians, that the syncopated version swung more. It sounded like jazz, okay? So there you go. And it didn't take me long to figure out how to come up with that little rule. Again, I'm not the first person to do it. But so we're talking about the cursive knowledge, right? So that's a great example of the real book. And some jazz songs need to be interpreted, some not. Okay, so maybe this sounds a little dumbed down, but this is an example of good teaching. There's a million examples. So here's something interesting. So that got me thinking about, well, where's the division between interpreting a standard but not interpreting a jazz tune? So it got me thinking about Joe Lovano playing a great Live at the Village Vanguard double album, and him playing Little Willie Leaps or some of those tunes. What else is on there? Lonnie's Lament, where he is now interpreting these important jazz tunes that, you know, and again, he's not the first one. Keith Jarrett does this. So it sort of got me as an advanced player thinking about, when can I start interpreting a tune? And what can I, you know, most of the time my interpretations of Charlie Parker are not as good as the originals, like interpreting Bach or something, right? But, that's interesting. Well, I guess at some point that's something I could imagine thinking about. Or listening to how Lovano interprets a Miles Davis melody, like Little Willie Leaps. So anyway, this simple, you know, some may say dumbed down, I'm going to disagree on that, approach to thinking can be great for, you know, a student who's first thinking about the real book or thinking about how to swing harder or thinking, you know, you follow the example, right? But for an advanced teacher, this can get us questioning some of the basic, you know, the things that we know are this way. Play Donnelly this way. Well, at some point, an artist is going to question those things, right? So the overall thing we're talking about today is this cursive knowledge, and it's slipperier than you may think. I have to be so on my toes, and I've been thinking about this concept for 10 years now, and I've been teaching it pretty actively for a good 3 or 4, and man, it's hard to get right. And I just see examples of pretty experienced teachers blowing it left and right. So I just challenge you to sort of think about that. There's all kinds of great books and articles, great Wikipedia page on the Cursive Knowledge. So check it out. It's interesting. It leads to really great teaching. And here's the thing. I love great teaching. I love seeing the light bulb go off with somebody. But I do this for a living. I'm a businessman too. So here's the thing. When I am scaring away my clients, that's not good business, right? So my job is to retain clients. First of all, I want to change their lives, right? So when I'm retaining a client and they keep coming back hungry week after week, I'm doing what they've hired me to do. Here's the other thing. That's good for my business if I can retain a student for 5 or 10 or 15 years. So that's another way to look at it, right? That's why we, you know, want to do a good job of it, so we keep our gig. All right. Well, I hope that's interesting and get some gears turning. I think it's a really important thing. And if I could say, you know, of my example of sort of what good teaching is or what subpar teaching is, coming from great musicians now, I think the Cursive Knowledge is like #1, top of the list, gets people torpedoed all the time. So I hope that's helpful for you, opens things up as a teacher, but as a player, starting to think about some of these basic fundamental things. And again, are we going to call those dumbed down? No, I don't think anyone's going to call the foundations of an art form dumbed down or basic, right? That's where everything can happen and change and blossom in new ways. So I hope this creates a little paradigm shift for some of you. Thanks for tuning in to episode 8.5 here. And as always, these live streams on Facebook are archived at the YouTube channel. That's Jeff Antoniuk Educator. If you go to YouTube, and there's now 35 or 40 videos like this but different up there. So please subscribe. Thank you for tuning in, and talk to you again soon. Take care.